Trade Genius.
What's up, everybody? This is Philip at Trade Genius. We're going to dive right into the charts, and I've got the daily Bitcoin chart up here with our Trade Sniper indicator. And this one I like. We use this primarily on lower time frames. It works on all different time frames, but for our day trading stuff, we use this on the low time frames a lot. We really like it when it fires like on a 5-minute. When you're doing the intraday trading and stuff like that. But it's good on the daily because it kind of shows you where the potential cyclical tops and bottoms are in the daily price action. So right now we have a daily sniper sell signal. So for me, I'm keying in on this area because it's starting to look a lot like what we have over here. We didn't get a sell sniper up here, but it was a cyclical top. But you'll notice we made a series of lower highs here. Okay, so this is going to be key. If this breaks down, basically this formation is looking like a bull pennant, but if that breaks down, then potentially we could see more correction to the downside, especially if we see weakness in the stock market, which we'll get to that chart here in a second too, because that thing's just been ripping higher. So real good indicator for those things. Also, you can see it on a 30-minute chart. Last one we had was a sniper buy here, fueled by that bar, and has maintained basically a range up in this area. Sell sniper fired here. Again, I watch for when the tops and bottoms hold, and ultimately that led into a nice down move. And this trade sniper fired here. Again, I look for these bottoms to hold, which it did. And then you had another second confirming one here. When you tend to see them grouping like this, that's a good indication on the smaller time frames that you're probably going to get a larger cyclical turn. So I do really like them for that. And again, on the smaller time frames, they're awesome for trading. So if you guys are into the leverage trading and stuff like that, it's awesome. If you're interested in that indicator, you can get that with the May special basic trading $3.99. So check that out. That's 12 months, get your room access, really good deal. So, are we correlating with the stock market still is another question. So let's go to the 4-hour chart, and I zoom out here, right, to kind of get a bigger picture. I mean, obviously from February, there's pretty clear-cut correlation until we get to about April 20th. And then what we see is, Bitcoin is the candlesticks, the S&P 500 is the line. And there's not as tight of a correlation here. If we zoom in a little closer here, where we get the percentages to line up a little better, it's starting, it's still kind of there, but it's not as tight as it was. So are we starting to decouple and break away? It's very possible here. It's not as tight as it was. So something to keep an eye on. But are we generally doing the same thing? You can kind of make an argument that when this rolls over, and then when this pops up, so this is popping up. But notice here, not so much. And also, Bitcoin's been making a series of lower highs, whereas the S&P 500 is not, right? It's made actually a series of higher highs. So there does seem to be a bit of a decoupling here in those terms. So let's just keep an eye on what's going on here with this, but not as tight as it was. And as far as I'm concerned, they can go ahead and decouple, because I think Bitcoin performs best when it's not tethered to the stock market, especially when things are tanking. So just keep an eye on that. But as you can see, these sniper indicators, these work on all different time frames. 4-hour does a great job as well. So really liking this indicator that we've rolled out in the last few months. All right, let's look at the Bitcoin Delta chart, another key piece of the puzzle. And what you'll notice with our current cycle, anytime we get north of a 50 Delta reading, it's pretty bearish for the price of Bitcoin. And we've poked above there here, where we had a little bit of a pullback. We've poked above it here. I like to wait for when the 4-hour Delta hooks down, which we had here, right? But then we've moved back up. So we could see a potential, guys are shorting this level. This doesn't hook back down. You can get a condition where we saw something similar to this here, back here, and ends up popping stops and going higher. And but again, I'm not sure we're going to get much to the upside in this area. I think the chances are, what I'd really like to see is a pull back down into this area around the 9,200. And if we are going to move higher, that'd be a great spot to launch from. So that's what I'm looking at currently. But I keep an eye on this Delta, because if this gets back under the 50, then potentially this probably can roll over to that 9,200 area. Now, when we do roll back under on the Delta, one thing I look at is the zero line. And if you notice, the last couple times we've hit the zero line from above, like in this area here, we've had nice moves up. One thing you can do is draw a trend line, and when that trend line breaches, off we go. So that's right now, these are probably one of the top two things I look at as far as the cyclical move on Bitcoin on something like a 4-hour time frame, and it works pretty well. So we'll be keeping an eye on this and posting these updates to the room. If we look at the stock market, you can kind of see Bitcoin is sort of breaking away. We'll have to keep an eye on that. The larger stock market, though, I think if the market rolls over hard and creates this third leg, which if we were tracking 2008 like we talked about, this down leg should have started right about on that move, and then it came in. Notice when this started to roll over, I think the Fed came in pretty hard here and bought that up. We are at levels that we were at back in October. In October, we had a positive GDP. Now we have a humongously negative GDP. So what that tells you is stock market valuations are out of touch with reality. And, I know stock market pricing tends to be forward-looking, but I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. I know things are reopening, but, the virus is still out there. And there's a lot of risk is all I'm saying, and a lot of uncertainty. So we won't know until more data comes in, but I think there's a lot of risk for where this market is and how bullish it's been from the bottom. I mean, you are going to get these sharp rallies, and that's why I'm cautious on all pricing going forward, even on Bitcoin, even though it's a non-correlated asset. If things start to roll over, some of that larger money exposure will start to sell, especially if margin calls start coming in again. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And you're also got the Fed in there now, just flooding the system with money, which ultimately isn't a good thing because there's consequences for that stuff. Over here on the right, you have the oil chart overlaid with the S&P 500. Now, if you look at the oil, I think that's a better representation of our economy. Up here, before the virus and all that stuff, we were humming along at $50 to $60 oil, more or less, with 55 being the median. And then we've fallen off, and now we're back, and now we're down to 32. So we've, where this has kind of recovered 50% of the move, the stock market's more than covered like 70% of the move. So the stock market is a lot stronger than oil, but I think oil is probably the true indicator here. You'll notice that oil, although the stock market's been making higher highs all through this time period, oil has barely gotten back to its peak back in April 20th before it had its final capitulation move of this current down leg. So the stock market's been outperforming oil, but I think oil is really truly the indicator. And if oil starts to roll over and get weak, hang on, because I think that's going to weigh down on the market because it has been leading the move down. And I think if it does start to roll over, that could lead the next move down. I think the Fed can try to stem the tide, but I don't think markets truly find a bottom. I don't think you can force a bottom on the market. I think it has to be found organically. So that's where that all stands. And again, the risk will be to the downside for Bitcoin as this rolls over, because I don't think that's inescapable in this current environment. So Bitcoin, decent run up into the halving. Rolls, the halving is done. Seeing a little bit of a rollover here with the lower highs. Again, cyclically on the daily, it's saying more downside. And then you can play around in those down cycles in the intraday stuff. You notice the 4-hour indicators on the sniper doing a good job of catching those cycle swing highs. So currently we're in a sell cycle here on that. So keep an eye on that going forward. But I think as the week progresses along, watching this area here, we're going to want to see 9,200 bounce. I think that's a decent spot for a bounce. And if that breaks down, then what we're going to probably be looking at is this level here to hold at 8,600. Okay, so those are the two levels to key in on this week. Are we off to the races? The only way I'd say we're off to the races on 10K and above is a close over 10,300 or so. Going back to the Delta chart, that's this big block here. It's a weekly block. And we got to get through that. We're having a hard time as we get into it. If we get a weekly close above 10,300, say goodbye to 10,000, in my opinion. All right, so this is a great time to accumulate Bitcoin, guys. Don't get me wrong. But anything under 10K, anything under 8K, great deal on the price of Bitcoin, because again, we've cut the output right in half. And even though we're in this environment now with the virus and all that, you have to understand that demand ultimately is still going to be rising into this going forward over the next years to come. So understand the macro, even though we're looking at the close shorter term time frame stuff, but understand the macro for your long term positioning on Bitcoin, because you should all be long term positioned in Bitcoin. It's just the math doesn't lie. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Again, if you're interested in any of our products or want to join us in the room, head over to tradelikeagenius.com. I'll see you on the next video. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.